Hello everyone. This is Namernam, and today I will be doing a video talking about the fairy team I used to complete my Monotype hard mode challenge. So, for this video, I decided to go for another no S ranks, another no S ranks team again, and it was a pretty interesting run because fairy is actually surprisingly not that bad of a type. It's not one of the greatest types right now, but I think it has some potential. Definitely some things that I slept on, like for example, first mon on my team, Tinkaton. This mon is actually incredibly useful. Because as a fairy steel, it is outclassed a lot by Klefki, because it can set spikes, it can foul play, it can run no offensive moves at all, use both Thunderwave and spikes and be incredibly useful as a utility Pokemon. And it can also set screens on top of that while having the great typing. That's generally pretty good. But what Tinkaton does is it acts as a rocker that can also mess up setup sweepers. So slower things like, let's say, Primarina can't really take advantage of you and set up on you, because even though you may not be able to kill Primarina by yourself, one of your teammates can. And by clicking Encore, you make that possible. So, on top of that, you also have Thunder Wave, and of course, Gigaton Hammer is like an extremely powerful move, but it's not going to be something that you'll use a lot to sweep with, at the very least. This EV spread is mainly used to just outspeed most of the setup sweepers in the tier, and also give you a little bit of bulk so you can take some hits. And believe me, you do want to take hits because we are running an air balloon, which allows you to wall certain Gliscor sets, but it also allows you to activate your pickpocket really easily, which allows you to steal another user's item. Now, when using this team, I will say most of the time you want to use pickpocket, but there are some situations where you don't want to. For example, against Choice Scarf or Choice Bandit Pokemon. Depending on the situation, you may not want to take their choice item, because Tinkaton will be, one, completely gutted with the choice item, and two, sometimes that choice item is the only reason why they're able to be dealt with in the first place, because they can lock into a move that you can otherwise be immune to. So for example, if we have, let's say, Choice Scarf Gengar, for example, and the only reason he's easier for your team to deal with is because he can't switch between Shadow Ball and Sludge Wave. You can switch into Tinkaton for Sludge Wave and Shadow Ball with most of your other defensive Pokemon. This is just a hypothetical, not for my team specifically, but yeah. You probably don't want to pickpocket that. I mean, you can't pickpocket Gengar anyway, but if we just pretend Gengar is a physical attacker, that's one example of why you wouldn't want to do that. And yeah, that's just generally the reason why you need to be careful with using it, because picking up choice items is it's messed me up quite a few times while I was testing this team. But generally, taking stuff like leftovers and heavy duty boots is still really good, especially heavy duty boots from like fatter Pokemon, like let's say Swampert, for example. Taking away his boots or his leftovers is very useful when he uses Flip Turn. Same thing with Alomomola, if you run into them. But yeah, do be careful when using it. And also Air Balloon just helps you a lot with switching into... I did mention before that it helps with Gliscor sets, but it also is just very handy to have another ground immunity that isn't Enamorous. So yeah. That's enough about that mon. Now let's talk about the other interesting mon on this team, which is Galarian Weezing. Now, I personally think this is one of the most annoying Pokemon to play against, but on Fairy, it's ranked as a D tier mon, which, sorry, I forgot to show you the S ranks for Fairy, but I couldn't use Flutter Mane, Iron Valiant, and Klefki on this team. And honestly, considering that I wasn't able to use any of the Fairy type S ranks, this team still felt pretty good and usable. Which is really shocking, because usually with lower tier types, you desperately need to use your S ranks because they're the only reason your type is usually playable, but for Fairy, I didn't really feel, with the exception of Flutter Main, I didn't really feel like I was missing or desperately needing Iron Valiant. It would have been nice to have them, don't get me wrong, but I didn't find myself really feeling like I really wish I had Iron Valiant right now, or I really wish I had Klefki right now. I felt just fine. I obviously missed having Flutter Main because not having Rapid Spin immunity, and also just Flutter Main in general feels pretty bad. That's the only one I would say I was missing, but the other two, I didn't really feel like I was missing that badly. It's not to say that they're not like S-rank Pokemon, they're definitely really good, but I was really shocked at how playable this team felt without any of the S-rank mons. But yeah, continuing on with Galarian Weezing. This Pokemon is very, very defensively very good. It's it only has one, two, actually only has like one real weakness because actually no, it has two weaknesses to Psychic and Steel. There's probably another one that I'm not thinking about right now, but Psychic and Steel are your main threats on this thing, and lo and behold, that's like the main thing that Fairy is weak to, so you probably already have a counterplay ready for it. For example, my Tinkaton. But Galarian Weezing does find itself just being a really good physical wall. Will-O-Wisp Pain Split allows it to have pretty good longevity, and Defog is one of the main things that's very good about this thing, because Fairy doesn't have a lot of innate hazard, hazard removal, so you find yourself having to rely a lot on putting Hatterene into harm's way to stop hazards from being on your side of the field, because unlike the enemy team, you won't have a way to get rid of them most of the time because you don't have a really good Rapid Spinner or Defogger. That is no longer the case if you use Galarian Weezing, because Galarian Weezing has Defog. Now, I opted for Sludge Bomb on Galarian Weezing instead of Strange Steam because I felt like a defensive Pokemon on this type doesn't really need to be running Fairy Stab, and since it's the only Poison type on the team, I think it's more beneficial if it uses its Poison Stab to help with Grass types and opposing Fairy types, instead of just spamming Fairy Stab that doesn't really do much for it specifically. Because why run a Poison type on the team if you're not going to use one of its stab moves? At least that's the way I see it. But yeah, this mod's pretty good, and it fit pretty well on the team, but it did make the team feel a bit passive, I will say. But when it wasn't passive, it was very, very effective at what it needed to do, so it's kind of a hit or miss mod. Hatterene, obviously, it's an A rank mod. I was surprised to see that, by the way. I thought this thing would be S rank, but yeah, this is an A rank mod. It's a very standard set, defensive, no special attack EVs. Purely just meant to take as many hits as possible, and just calm mind up and sweep. Yeah, nothing really fantastical or strange about this set. And Choice Band Azumarill is actually something I did later on in the replay. I believe I have regular Belly Drum, but Choice Band felt a lot better, especially on the other team that I made after completing this challenge. But yes, Azumarill with... And this was actually something I did frequently flip-flop between. But Choice Band Azumarill is more immediately threatening, while Belly Drum Azumarill is way better at ending games and just being a cleaner. And it was very hard to decide which set I wanted to use, because the amount of situations where Choice Band was usable was like really, really important and like really vital. There are just some times where I'd really want to use Choice Band Azumarill, and then there's other times where I really wish I had Belly Drum Azumarill to just straight up win the game. I still can't really say which one is better, in my opinion. I feel like Belly Drum is better, but I feel like when I see my results with Choice Band, it doesn't really feel like the case. So, I don't know. I'll have to probably test more with the other team that I have, but yeah. Azumarill was definitely necessary on this team though, because I needed a physical attacker. And this is honestly one of the better ones. Also is a steel neutrality, so it allows you to take a couple of steel hits, and that's also one of the main reasons why I chose Choice Band, was because I would often find Azumarill just switching into steel moves. Not like powerful steel moves, more like the weaker ones, like an Iron Head from Corphinite, for example. I would find it switching into those and still taking a decent amount of damage, and it would mess up its belly drum potential. So I decided, why not just use Choice Band instead? So that way I don't have to worry about that as much. But then it just makes the following mon feel a bit awkward to use, which is Ninetales. So one of the reasons why this mon in previous generations wasn't used on Fairy was because Hail would constantly chip your own team. But now that Snow doesn't do that anymore, this mon is actually not that bad anymore. It's still heavily outclassed by Klefki, but what it does do, it does pretty well. It's way faster than Klefki. It also has a better utility move in Encore that it can use, and it's also an Ice type, which is very good against the very meta flying teams that are running around. And on top of that, it also has a one-turn setup move that it can reliably set pretty well. As opposed to Klefki needing 2 turns to set up both of its screens, Ninetales only needs 1, and it's pretty fast, so it most likely will get off that screen. In most situations. Not all situations, but most situations it will get off the Aurora Veil. And Aurora Veil is just better than Reflector Light Screen because, again, you can set it in 1 turn, and it's also it just does both things at the same time. So you don't even have to, like, awkwardly time one before the other. You just have both at the same time. And those 1 or 2 turns can be very, very important. So, yeah. But yeah, that's it for this mon. It's very solid. I was very happy with using this mon. It was actually surprisingly good. I think it might... If it wasn't for how good Klefki was, I would say this mon should be like a higher tier, but unfortunately Klefki is just ridiculously good on Fairy, so I think I'm fine with it with its current ranking in D tier for now, but I definitely think that this mon is very good. I think it's definitely better than Galarian Weezing or Grimmsnarl. Like, it just felt incredibly good to use, in my opinion. But yeah. And the last Pokemon we have is Enamorus, which there's nothing really fantastical about this set either. It's just a very standard Contrary Choice Scarf Sweeper. Uses Superpower to stack up buffs. It can also use Moonblast and Earth Power to do some decent coverage, and Healing Wish allows you to heal up your Azumarill, or originally that was what it was supposed to do. It heals up Azumarill or Hatterene. And yeah, that's pretty much all this thing does. So, all in all, this team was meant to get Hatterene or Azumarill to sweep, and Enamorus just allowed you to poke holes through walls, or catch some, or not to catch, but to clean up some weaker Pokemon, or potentially threaten its own sweep as well, with speed control. But yeah, Hatterene and Azumarill had a lot to do on these teams. They had to break down these teams a lot. While Tinkaton and Weezing, like, allowed them to... It's just a very simple balance team, I would say. Which, it feels weird to call this a balance team, but it kinda is. That's what the goal is, anyway. But, yeah. I really did enjoy using this team, as I said before. And let's go to the replay, where I do eventually win with it. I only have one, unfortunately, because the other replays that I ended up doing ended up being with the other team that I made after this, which... I guess I can show you here. But yeah, this team I made with Flutter main and Klefki. This one's still under development. I'm still trying to do some testing with it. But this team has been doing me pretty well. I actually got 1500s with this team recently. So I'm actually pretty happy about that. Fairy in general just surprised me at how good it was. But enough about that. We'll talk about this one replay that I managed to obtain with this team against a 1400s player. So yeah, it's Fairy versus Fire. This matchup should not be very good for us, because Fire just has Hearthflame Ogrepon. But yeah, I send out Hadron first. We end up putting in a Azumarill. I believe this should still be a Belly Drum Azumarill, or yeah, it should be Belly Drum. I end up getting the defense drop. That's incredibly lucky because now he can't set up rocks, which is very good for us. I end up switching the weather to Hail, which this was very handy in this matchup specifically. I put up Aurora Veil. I predict that he's going to use Court Change to take my Aurora Veil, so I use Encore on him, and then proceed to use Aurora Veil myself. Now, Volcarona with Aurora Veil is incredibly scary, and I misplayed there, thinking that he would be faster than me, but I'm faster than him, so that's not how that works. So for some reason he decided to switch out there, even though he didn't really have anything to worry about. I might be Choice Band, though. I did think I was a Belly Drum at that time, but I guess I must have been Choice Band. Actually, yeah, I probably was Choice Band because I don't think I ran Liquidation on the other set. But yeah, we stole Sarah Ledge's Focus Sash, and it's encored into clicking Shadow Sneak now. Fortunately, I don't have a normal type to abuse that with. We get a lucky paralysis, but it doesn't really matter anyway since he ends up living the Earth Power. Since he's slower because of the para, we managed to outspeed him with Aqua Jet. Ogrepon comes out, we send in Weezing. Weezing can't really do a ton against Ogrepon, but it does, I think at this point it does have Sludge Bomb. Yeah, it has Sludge Bomb, so it actually could have threatened it and actually killed it there. This Volcarona, for whatever reason, doesn't have Heavy Duty Boots and uses Substitute, so we end up breaking through it pretty easily. He uses Bug Buzz. I used Calm Mind, thinking that it would Quiver Dance, but it did not do that. He uses Quiver Dance that turn, which will allow him to KO me with Bug Buzz in his next turn. He has leftovers, so he's healing up slowly. I use Aqua Jet. Thankfully, I don't get the burn. They send in Weezing again. He uses his Ivy Cudgel, it doesn't do that much to Weezing. He uses it again, we use Sludge Bomb, and it ends up killing Ogrepon. And just like that, we won against Fire, which is one of the harder matchups. I did get a little bit of luck. Like I said, beating up Torkoal like that was very good, because getting rid of his Sun early was incredibly, incredibly helpful to making sure he couldn't punch big holes through my team. Because if he still had Torkoal, if he still had that mod, he could put it in multiple times, allowing Ogrepon to just 2-hit KO Weezing. But it wasn't able to 2-hit KO Weezing ever because it just wasn't strong enough, and it didn't have the Sun to power up its Ivy Cudgel. So yeah, it was a bit lucky, but I do think this does show the potential Fairy has, especially in bad matchups. Because even though Azumarill is like really good against this type, overall, Sun Offense Fire is just so incredibly strong against Fairy. Especially since I have an Ice type on my team. Doesn't really help the case at all. But yeah, I did very much enjoy this team. It was a very fun team to use. And as you saw, I already made another team and climbed pretty high with it, so I might end up using Fairy a lot more in the future. So without further ado, that'll be the end of this video, and I will now spin the wheel to see which type I will do next. And it's grass. Alright, I'll see you guys next time.